Hey guys, we are back with another episode of Steampunks, the show where we go through all of the latest releases over the last week on Steam and let you know what's good. My name's Jess McDonald.
And I'm Edmund Tran.
And without further ado, let's talk about what's worth talking about. What's your first game?
Alright, my first game is called City of Brass. So City of Brass is a first-person roguelike dungeon crawler set in an Arabian Nights world. So it's made by an Australian studio called Uppercut Games, who are comprised of a bunch of people who actually worked on Bioshock 1 and 2.
Okay.
So the best part about this game is the combat system. There are a bunch of different weapons you can use, but the core of everything is your whip. And this whip can be used to do a bunch of things. So you can whip an enemy's legs to trip them up, smack them in the head to stun them, and you can whip their weapons to disarm them. The whip can also be used to grab objects to throw at enemies. And then you have the sword, which works about as you'd expect. So whipping dudes to trip them up and then finishing with your sword is very satisfying to do in this game. So like any good Indiana Jones style adventure, there are spikes and arrow traps all over the place, as well as sort of crushing rocks and stuff like that. And a big part of the game is making sure you recognize these and avoid them as part of your run through, but you can also use them to your advantage. So during a fight, you can kite someone to a location and then trip them up when they're over a spike pit and let them get annihilated by spikes. There's quite a variety of different enemy types, and sort of each one needs different strategies to overcome. As with all roguelikes, levels are procedural and death is permanent, so you'll need to work a lot on your sort of combat skills. But that's okay, because combat's really satisfying to learn, and being good at it comes with its own rewards.
Yeah.
Mental rewards. But in terms of sort of actual digital rewards that you get in the game, you can use the treasure you collect along the way to purchase upgraded weapons that come with like status effects, and the difficulty curve is actually pretty gradual because of this, because you'll do more damage and all that kind of stuff. I think this game looks really nice too. The Arabian Nights thing is certainly a theme you don't see a lot of these days. I mean, there are some kinks in this game for sure, but for me, the whip and sword combat is so fun and sort of strangely unique that it's worth checking out. It's $25 on Steam, and it's also available for Xbox One and PS4.
Sweet, well that one sounds pretty easy to sum up.
Yep.
What's not easy to sum up is a massive game that came out this week on PC, Total War Saga, Thrones of Britannia. Ooh. I am a Total War fan from about 15 years ago, and boy is it hard to get back into Total War.
There's a lot that's happened in that time.
There's a lot that's happened. So in this particular game, as you can imagine, you're playing out sort of the evolution of the British Isles, when there are a lot of different factions, and you're choosing one and basically conquering Britain. It's historical in the way that there are the factions that are around at the time. So we're talking West Axis, the Gaels, the Vikings, you name it. There's, I think, about 20 of them. So you're still going to have historically accurate factions, historically accurate troops, and figures. But of course, you can't expect any historical battles here because you're recreating an invented version of history. So as much as this is obviously a Total War game, it is, as I mentioned, a saga title. It's smaller scale. Certain things have been stripped back, different things have been changed, which is sort of dividing Total War fans as to how they feel about this one. But as I said, it was designed to be a standalone spin-off title, and it does come at the lower price point of $45 as a result of that. So one of the things that's changed is with settlements. You'll now have minor settlements that can be captured and can't be garrisoned. So that means defending your area is a more tense endeavor, since people can come from anywhere and just take your undefended settlements. And you need those settlements to do things like sustain farms or mines or whatever they're predetermined to be supplying resource-wise. On the flip side, it also means you can take settlements from your foes to starve them out, push them into attrition and things like that. Another interesting thing this time around is that you can hire troops from a universal garrison in this game, but they take time to come to full power. So you can hire troops from any of your even minor settlements, but they won't arrive in their full force. So that kind of simulates the idea of troops arriving to the army gradually. If you're new to the series or it's been a while, this is going to be a ton to take in. There is no very obvious tutorial, which can be rough if this is either your first endeavor into Total War or the first time you've played it in a really long time. The complicated nature of this game is, as I see it, an upside as much as it is a downside, because when you do get embedded in the game, as you'd expect with all games that are hardcore strategy, it is deep as hell and there is so much to micromanage. Your generals for all your different settlements have various attributes that impact their effectiveness, how good they are at being generals, and give you little buffs to things like your resources or armies. Combat is the main thing that you'll find to be very familiar if you've played any Total War game before. They're varying on scale from little skirmishes in fields to huge castle assaults. In the tradition of Total War, the animations are still pretty janky. That said, the area map looks excellent. There are short-term and long-term victories ranging from all-out decimation to raising your fame level or holding certain cities. As someone who loves strategy games but isn't a Total War devotee, I think this is a really cool installment. I love the area of history. I think the saga thing is a really good idea, and there's some clever additions. If you're already a Total War player, there looks to be enough here to revitalize the franchise without it feeling completely different from everything that's come before.
All right, well, that game was all about surviving in ye olde England. The next game I played is about surviving in the forest.
Creepy.
In a game called The Forest. So this is a first-person open-world survival game that just came out of early access. It went into early access in 2013, which was a long time ago. So the premise is that you're a father who's traveling with his son on a plane. The plane crashes in the wilderness, and your son gets kidnapped by a cannibal dude, and you have to survive. There are no real goals in this game. There are some survival guidelines that are suggested, but other than that, how you go about progressing is 100% up to you. Much like other survival games, you'll start chopping shit down and gathering materials to make sure you can stay hydrated, fed, and warm. There's weather to think about, there's animals to hunt, and there's a day-night cycle to worry about too, because it gets really dark. I'm not a hardcore survival sim player, but I think the loop of these games is really, really easy to get sucked into if you let yourself. Of course, it wouldn't be a true PC survival game without some adversaries, and like I said before, this island is littered with these absolutely terrifying looking skinless cannibals who can go absolutely ape shit and come at you if they spot you, although sometimes not. It's all about avoiding the cannibals when you can see them, and sort of gearing up to take them on when you need to. So you can build weapons like advanced spears and bows and arrows and all that kind of stuff. I think one of the mysteries of the forest is sort of what's the deal with these cannibals, and are they like a society, or are you the real monster, and all that kind of stuff. There was a point where I got captured and got strung up and encountered some pretty disturbing ass scenes. So this is as much of a little bit of a horror game as much as it is a survival game, but there is the option to have a peaceful mode without enemies, which is really great if all you want to do is chill and build some log cabins. Now, when this game first came out in early access, I remember thinking it looked fucking stunning. And it still looks pretty good 5 years later. It's definitely got a focus on being realistic. And it has some nice sort of models and post-processing effects. I think the realistic vibe of the forest makes it a little more appealing to me as a survival simulation, because it gives you this really cinematic feel and tone that makes it feel like you're playing a video game version of Lost or something. There's also a co-op mode, which I haven't personally tried, but I've seen a bunch of great videos on Twitter of people getting up to some co-op hijinks, and it looks like it could be a ton of fun. And it's also very reasonably priced. It's only $20 on Steam, which makes it a really easy recommendation, even if you're only a little bit interested in survival games, whether that's peaceful survival games or tense survival games. So check out The Forest.
All right, so cannibals are pretty scary, but so is high school. And
I guess.
I could have gone the monster angle. I went with high school. So I'm talking about a game that actually all of us in the GameSpot Australia office played this week, called Monster Prom. So prom is coming up in 3 weeks, I believe. And basically you want to kind of get in the good graces of whoever your prom prospect is by doing things they want, being the kind of person they want, and then hopefully at the end they won't rebuff you. You'll be answering a bunch of questions which determine your starting stats, but these stats are a little unusual, so they include things like fun, boldness, smarts, and money. So you'll have the opportunity in the morning, afternoon, and evening to decide where to go on the school grounds each day. One of those places will generally reward you quite reliably with a certain stat. And then the second half of that period will consist of you confronting one or more of the cool kids, aka your potential prom dates in school that you're trying to date. So if you've played the Yorg, this game will look and feel really familiar. I would say it's like a very adult, silly, and occasionally super confronting version of that game. So since the stats are things like fun, it can be tricky to figure out which answer in any situation that arises associates associates with which stat. It's a lot more obtuse as to which answers associate with things like fun or boldness or money. I will say up front that I think we all found the prom date prospects pretty universally hateful, but look, they're monsters. It's part of the whole shtick, you're monsters, they're monsters, which also plays into the complete absurdity of events, which are almost always related to killing people or drugs or sex. So no kids playing this game.
This game also has beautiful art. I really love the images and all the stuff that I've seen so far. I mean, a big part of this game is the writing, right?
Yeah.
It's really humorous and meta. It can be hit or miss sometimes with its humor, but I think it provided more sort of cringes and laughs, which is a good thing, especially for a competitive co-op party game like this.
It is weirdly fun to play with friends. So it's exactly the same game if you played on your own, but it's sort of like a screen share. You just get to watch everybody else go about their turns. There's 1,384 different outcomes to different scenarios, 22 endings, and 388 unique events. This game's also $12, so you're really not spending too much. If you like the sound of it, it's pretty much exactly what you think you're getting, except probably slightly more gratuitous. So if you're on board with that, you'll probably have a fun time with this.
Prom?
All right, that does it for this episode of Steampunks. If you've played any of the games we've played this week and you have something to say about them, let us know at our Twitter accounts. I'm at Edmund Tran.
I'm at Jess McDonald.
Where you can also let us know if you think we should pay attention to a few future games on Steam. But until next week, we'll see you then.
See you guys.